Thanks everyone for your patience. We're just waiting for Andre to log into Teams. The meeting is called to order. Can we have the roll?
Danielle Bailey.
Here.
Greg Strike.
Here.
Andre Spinelli.
Here.
Jared Gardner.
Here.
Erin O'Quinn.
Here.
Radhika Krishna.
Here.
Jim Winchester.
Here.
Scott Pullis.
Here.
Jeff Ron.
Here.
Thank you.
Moving on to public disclosures. Commissioner Strike. Oh, sorry. Yes, Commissioner Strike.
Yes, no disclosures.
Commissioner Spinelli.
Nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Gardner.
No disclosures.
Commissioner O'Quinn.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Krishna.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Winchester.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Pullis.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Ron.
No disclosures.
And I too have no disclosures. Before we get into item F5 of our agenda, I'm going to speak the procedure by which the public may speak to the Commission. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Commission at its meetings is as follows. After staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, will receive 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, such as community councils or PTAs, will receive 5 minutes. Individuals will receive 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes, except Commission recommendations to the Assembly, which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the Clerk's Office within 20 days after the approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission of the resolution, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. Moving on to item F5, case 2021-0034. Staff, can we hear a report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a Context-Sensitive Solutions, or CSS, Design Study Report, or DSR. It's a review for an upgrade of 4th Avenue signals and lighting between A Street and Cordova Street. That's about a quarter-mile project corridor. The downtown lighting and signals upgrade reconnaissance study evaluated conditions of signals and lighting equipment in downtown Anchorage. This resulted in a long-term plan to address issues. That study identified 4th Avenue as having a need for electrical system replacement. Issues include corrosion on anchor bolts, the need for electrical grounding systems, and concerns with lighting for safety. Existing lighting in the project corridor was installed in the 1960s and 1980s. There are 3 intersections in the project corridor that have signals where 4th Avenue crosses C Street, D Street, and E Street. Currently, the signals at all 3 intersections have no pedestrian or vehicle detection features. There are sidewalks currently on both sides of 4th Avenue. Anchorage Municipal Code requires sidewalks in the project corridor to be at least 11.5 feet. The current sidewalk on the east half of the project corridor is only 6 feet wide and not all sidewalks meet Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA requirements. Most of the storm drain inlets in the project corridor are also in poor condition, and the pavement has signs of degradation due to its age and traffic volume. The commission reviewed the concept report for this project as an informational item at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on January 11th, 2021. This is now an agenda item to review the design study report for this project. 4th Avenue is a neighborhood collector west of C Street and a minor arterial east of C Street. The focus of this project was on signal and lighting systems, so there wasn't a specific traffic and safety analysis for the corridor, which is sufficient. The existing land use is mostly commercial. The project corridor provides access to the 4th Avenue Marketplace, Aviator Hotel, 2 parking lots, and the 5th Avenue parking garage. The project corridor is also within an area along 4th Avenue that has been designated as the Anchorage Mushing District. So the idea is to eventually have informational plaques or other designation for the Anchorage Mushing District. The downtown area is zoned into 3 districts. This project corridor runs between 2 of those districts. The B2A, or Central Business District Core, is south of 4th Avenue, and the B2B, Central Business District Intermediate, is north of 4th Avenue. The corridor runs through an area designated as a city center in the land use plan. As part of the design study report, the petitioner proposed 3 alternative designs for the project, plus a no action alternative. Alternative A would replace traffic signals, but leave the existing lighting and pedestrian facilities. Alternative B would replace the traffic signals and lighting, but would have minimal sidewalk replacement. And then alternative C would replace the signals and lighting and also include a full sidewalk replacement. Alternative C is the preferred alternative because it will fully address the lighting issues and create an ADA accessible pedestrian sidewalk. It will also create a unified looking character for the downtown area to implement goals and policies of planning documents. Alternative C would also allow for deficient storm drains within the project corridor to be addressed beneath the fully reconstructed sidewalks. This alternative is compliant with several goals and policies of plans. These include the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, the Anchorage 2020 Comprehensive Plan, the Downtown Comprehensive Plan, and the Anchorage Pedestrian Plan. I'll just note a couple relevant goals. In the 2020 Comprehensive Plan, it says a policy is to strengthen the Central Business District's role as a regional center for commerce, services, finance, arts, and culture, government offices in medium to high density residential development. And the Downtown Comprehensive Plan identifies the 4th Avenue development site as a vision. There were no objections from reviewing agencies. Long-range planning submitted comments confirming the project is supported by the Downtown Comprehensive Plan. Traffic engineering concurred with the curb bump outs and the widening of pedestrian facilities, but they did want to verify that with the reduced intersection width that it would still support larger vehicle turning radius. And they also noted that this corridor is used for fur randy events that surround the start of the Iditarod sled race that require barrier support locations, so they wanted to make sure that those could still be used. The department recommends approval of the preferred alternative identified in the context-sensitive solutions design study report for the 4th Avenue Signals and Lighting Project for the preferred alternative C, which would replace signals and lighting with a full sidewalk replacement, subject to the following conditions, which are: 1, that the design would support larger vehicle turning radii with traffic engineering; 2, that the design of the barrier support would be verified for safety during fur randy events surrounding the start of the Iditarod race; and 3, to provide a stormwater pollution prevention plan. That is the end of my staff report.
Thank you. Looking to the queue, it appears as though we have a question from Commissioner Strike. Commissioner Strike?
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. You mentioned that this option 3 will give a more unified look to the corridor. Can you identify the corridor currently to the east and west of this particular site? Do they currently each have 11.5-foot wide sidewalks?
I believe on page 2 of my staff report, I discussed some improvements that were made adjacent to the project corridor. I'll also let the petitioner is also here that may be able to add on to that. Let's see,
Okay, what I'm trying to do is ascertain and validate the unified look to the corridor. I just didn't know if this was going to be the first of many more future changes that we might do along the way, or is this a catch-up to other areas of the corridor that have already been done? But based on the statement that it will give a unified look to the corridor, it gave rise to the statement that previous improvements had been done previously.
So I found what I just wanted to point out from my staff report. So that's a segment of 4th Avenue between A Street and Cordova Street. So that's continuing east from the project corridor. That was upgraded in 2020. And another segment farther east, so that would be between Cordova Street and Ingra Street. That's currently being designed by Alaska DOT.
And I understand it said that it was upgraded, but I don't know that I could tell whether or not it was upgraded to the standards that you're proposing here in option 3. So again, it begged the question whether or not the previous upgrades that have been done in the corridor are consistent with this type of upgrade or their own, because I'm just trying to validate the statement to create a unified look to the corridor. And that just, if we're playing catch-up, or is this the first one that's going to be of this type, and we're going to let the other ones then make the other ones look unified? And maybe we can let the petitioner answer that question.
Yeah, I'd imagine
it's
the second, but I'll let the petitioner see if they have anything else to add. I just know it's the second one out of this this plan that was done in 2018 to evaluate the downtown lighting and signals.
Okay. And through the chair, a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And one of the other follow-up questions would be, you talk about the traffic conditions overview and talks about the previous report found that this area had a higher crash rate above average in the area, but fewer injuries, and likely due to low traffic speeds. And while you may not have the specifics, maybe the petitioner does through their study, I was wondering if those traffic accidents that happened, were they between buses, trucks, say vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles? What was the predominant mode of operation that was creating these incidents or accidents in this corridor that made it above average?
Through the chair, Commissioner Strike, all I can report is that the crash rate was slightly above average, and this project would improve the signals at the intersections in the project. So I suppose it could perhaps improve safety. I do not know the particulars of the specific crashes that were in that report, but perhaps the petitioner may have some specific examples.
Thank you. And that begs the question, what improvements that were going to be made would help to reduce accidents in this corridor? Because it's unclear if it's strictly due because of the width of the sidewalks, people stepping off, et cetera. Otherwise, it's kind of a moot point for even having that in this section. But if it's going to reduce pedestrian accidents or reduce bicycle accidents or reduce tourist traffic with buses, I think it'd be good to know. But it sounds like we're saying that the traffic signals will help reduce these accidents. We don't know what kind of accidents these even are. or it's not spelled out in the report or dictated in the report. Thank you.
Commissioner Ron?
Thank you through the chair. Staff request perhaps clarifying language or clarification of language in department recommendation number 2 on page 10 of the staff packet. Currently reads verified design of barrier support locations may be used safety for. Just want to make sure I understand the intent and perhaps need for clarification there or change in language. And also question if it's restricted just to the Ferrande events or if the planning department would be satisfied with perhaps a little bit more broad language to allow for those support locations to be established at events, including or such as Ferrande.
Commissioner Ron, I was going to pull up the comment. I pulled that from, here we go. So that came from traffic engineering. They had specifically mentioned the Fur Rendezvous because it's such a prominent event, and this will be within the Mushing district. So that's why I wrote the condition that it could be used safely during the Fur Rendezvous Festival for the Iditarod sled dog race, with it being in this corridor. I'd imagine if it's safe for that event, it could be safer for other events that could potentially close the street. Okay,
I think I heard in your response there an answer to my question, and perhaps the word should be safely rather than safety, just a minor typo in the staff packet.
Gotcha. Yes, I agree with that edit.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Krishna?
Thank you, through the chair. I see that some of the stakeholders have requested some design elements as well as outlets on the light poles. Are those considered for inclusion in this plan right now?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just heard, are those, I didn't quite hear the last bit of what you said.
Sure. I was just wondering if the design elements and then the outlets that have been requested are planned to be included in this project right now.
I will actually defer to the petitioner. I'm not sure on that specific question.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Polis?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that question about all those outlets and the post covers and stuff like that. Did maintenance get to review this at all? Is that incorporated in anyone's review that commented on it? Just wondering about, you know, some of the common gripes that we hear about maintenance considerations regarding planter boxes and anything not flush in the sidewalk or asphalt in general.
Commissioner Polis, the case would have been routed to all reviewing agencies that normally review cases for PZC, so it would have likely also gone to the street maintenance department. And I did not receive any concerns from them about maintenance.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions in the queue, can we hear from the petitioner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Will Webb. I work for Kinney Engineering in Anchorage, and we have been hired by the municipality to do the design work for this project. I want to actually, again, my name is Will Webb. We've got Julie Makala with Project Management and Engineering with us as well, and she is the municipal project administrator in case there's additional questions or information beyond what I can provide. I'd like to, though, take the first minute or two to address some of the questions that came up after Ms. Appleby's presentation. She actually covered a lot of the project, so there's not a whole lot I need to talk about, I don't believe. But regarding consistency along the corridor, there was a project that was constructed last year that reconstructed the lighting system on on 4th Avenue from A to Cordova. That project did not widen the sidewalks, so that aspect of 4th Avenue will be inconsistent in that there's narrower sidewalks to the east. We're going to install, or we're planning to install 11.5-foot sidewalks from C Street to A Street, and then further west in the more dense part of 4th Avenue, the sidewalks are about 18 feet wide, so kind of works our way up to the full width sidewalks based on what we have for available right away. As far as crash rates go, the elevated crash rate had to do with pedestrian crashes at, I believe it was at 4th and C, and we did not go into the specifics of those crashes. It was only a little bit above average, so we didn't really think it warranted a specific look. But we're going to be improving the pedestrian environment and enlarging the curb bulbs where we can, which should help enhance pedestrian safety. But we didn't look at things from a numerical or objective perspective that way. And then regarding the outlets, we have been working with both Greater Anchorage Inc., which runs the For Rendezvous event, and the Anchorage Downtown Partnership as far as what they would like to see with respect to outlet locations, outlet quantities, and then also outlet protection so that there's not an opportunity for unauthorized use of those outlets. And along those lines with maintenance, we have been working with Anchorage Downtown Partnership, and they maintain, or they do the day-to-day maintenance along the corridor, and so we've been working with them on specific details of the project. And then as the project goes on, of course, it will go through the municipal maintenance agencies for review as well. With that, I'd like to at least step through the project here briefly to either refresh folks or give everyone an idea of where we're at with the project, and then I'll open it up for any more questions you all might have. The project overview is the goal of the project is to reconstruct the traffic signals and lighting systems in the project area. We did do a recon study. We basically inventoried all of the signal and lighting systems through the downtown area a couple of years ago and found that 4th Avenue had the most bad equipment out in the field, followed closely by 3rd Street and then on throughout downtown. And so this project is a result of that, where we're looking to address things that are in poor condition or that are potential safety hazards for the public or that simply have just outlived their useful life. However, as you can imagine, as we look at the signal and lighting systems, we have to dig up the sidewalks to replace the underground components. As soon as we start digging up sidewalks, then we get into ADA concerns, and then if we've already dug up the sidewalks, then people start to want other things. And so as a result, we've expanded the project to include streetscape elements to be consistent with the downtown comprehensive plan, while still trying to really maintain our focus on the signal and lighting aspects of the project. It is a municipally funded project, so we don't have any state funds or federal funds. It's all bond funds, and it's managed by project management and engineering. Kinney Engineering is doing the civil and the civil design. We're also teamed with Kaufman Engineers for electrical design and Corbis for landscape architecture. The project extends from A Street on the east, where the previous project stopped, out to E Street there on the west down to Grizzly Gifts and Peratrovich Park. Our planned improvements include replacing the traffic signals and lighting systems, since that's what we're here for. We're planning to follow the Downtown Comprehensive Plan guidance, which laid out how things are going to look downtown, which was nice. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We have something to follow. We are planning to install the green acorn pedestrian lights. They're the acorn-style fixtures west of C Street, kind of in that more historic area of 4th Avenue. And then east of C Street, we'll be using the blue-gray cylindrical fixtures. I've got a picture later. But those are the same as what was installed on 4th Avenue last year, further to the east. Streetlight and traffic poles will have a standard galvanized finish. This was specific request from the maintenance organization so that they've got extras and spares and whatnot. So if there is a problem, it's a matter of just pulling something out of the yard and not some special thing. We're going to replace the sidewalks to meet ADA requirements since we are digging them up anyway. And since we're replacing the sidewalks and regrading things, then that also means we have to repave the street to make everything work good together. We're adding curb bulbs where possible, which is most everywhere. There isn't one already. As Ms. Appleby mentioned, traffic is very interested, and the municipal traffic department is very interested in making sure that our design accommodates the design vehicles in the area. So our curb bulbs have been designed for the large semi-trucks at 4th and C, and then buses and delivery trucks elsewhere. If we use the large trucks for design vehicles everywhere, we would pretty much have no curb bulbs because they take a lot of space. But 4th and C especially is on the truck route, so we designed for those larger vehicles. But otherwise, we're making sure our tour buses and delivery trucks can get through everywhere else. The project also is participating in the 1% for Art process. That is, there's like a firewall between design and the art, so I don't know anything about it, but that's ongoing parallel to the design aspects. And then since we're tearing up the sidewalk, we're putting in street trees on the west half of the project corridor as well. Those will have soil cells under the sidewalk to help promote healthy trees, and then also curbing around the openings where the tree wells are to keep all of the salts and runoff out of the tree wells. As we go through and implement things and do the design for the project, we're incorporating lessons we've learned both from our reconnaissance study and from the previous phase of the project. We're going to raise the pole foundations up about 6 inches. That will keep the anchor bolts and whatnot out of the runoff and salts and especially the runoff from the flower baskets. That seems really corrosive. So that should help improve longevity of the equipment. We're working to place the equipment consistently along the corridor, so it's got a nice clean streetscape look, and also again helps to keep some of that runoff out of our underground components. And then we're diligently working with the adjacent property owners on construction, scheduling, and phasing, which is one of the reasons why we're working hard to construct this project this year while tourism is down. So to give you an idea of what our finished product is going to look like, we've got a rendering here of kind of a streetscape on the west side from E to C. We've got the green pole with the acorn-style light fixture there and some street trees. And then further to the east, on the east end of the project, we don't have the street trees, and we're going with the blue-gray fixtures, cylindrical fixtures like you see on the first phase of 4th Avenue, and then also similar to what's been used on 9th Avenue and over by the Denina Center and elsewhere around downtown. This was the fixture style identified in the Downtown Comprehensive Plan several years ago. The C Street to A Street segment is also where we're widening the sidewalks and we're putting in new curb bulbs and planter at B Street intersection where there's space there. Outreach, we've worked with a number of folks to help try and gain stakeholder approval for what we're doing and incorporate their concerns and comments into the project. Anchorage Downtown Partnership has been great for working with regarding outreach and their maintenance input. And then Greater Anchorage Inc., they are the folks behind the Fur Rendezvous and the Muching District, and so we've been working with them on design details and how to incorporate the things that they are planning for that area as well. And then obviously we're here with you all at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we've got plans to go before Urban Design Commission here in May as well. Downtown Community Council, Transportation Fair, all the usual things. And then we've been working with a number of the local businesses to help specifically schedule our traffic control and construction phasing to work with their businesses and their schedules.
Mr. Webb, I just wanted to let you know that your time is up, but if you want to take the next 30 seconds or so to wrap it up, that would be great.
Thank you very much. The last thing I'd like to mention is our schedule, and that is, like I said, we're looking to construct the project at the end of this year, or late this season. so starting in August. So with that, we need to wrap up our final plans and bidding at the end of May, which puts us at the UDC here next month. So we're stacking up the CSS process, but we're diligently keeping on top of things to try and get this done. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's really all I have, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, and I believe we have a question from Commissioner Strike.
Yes, thank you again through the chair, and thank you for that presentation. I know that this presentation is titled Signals and Lighting Upgrade E to A Street, but in the report itself, we talk about, or your report has a number of status or reviews that have been done on the manholes and the storm grade and the catch basins, et cetera. Are any of these being repaired or replaced also as a result of the signal and lighting upgrade?
Yes, sir. So we, as you mentioned, we actually, the municipality did an inventory of the storm drains in the area. We need to replace a lot of it simply because of the curb and grading work that we're doing. But they went in and evaluated the things that we weren't otherwise going to replace. Since we're going to be replacing everything on top, they didn't want to leave 40-year-old material underground that was at risk of failing without looking at it. So they went through and did an inventory of it. We found a few manholes that need to be replaced. We're planning to slip line the main storm drain trunk through there. It's in relatively good shape, but by slip lining it, we can make sure that it will last at least as long as all the stuff we're putting up on top of the surface.
And you follow up too, you mentioned that this was planned for this summer when tourist traffic is at its low, where we believe it will be low. And I hope you're wrong, by the way, but that it's a bonded project. So was that bonded project taking into account the whole extent of this work, or did the bonded portion, I assume it's already been approved, do we have the flexibility to expand the work beyond what may have originally been presented to the bondholders?
Yes,
Hi, this is Julie Mackla. I'm the project administrator. I can answer that a little bit more about the budget. So the bonds have been approved over the last couple years, and so some of the money is left over from the 4th Avenue A to Cordova project. I believe there was bonds on last week's bond proposition for this also. We're making this a perpetual kind of project. Downtown is desperately in need of signal and lighting upgrades. Because of the amount of work to do the design, so we're not really able to add on, if you're asking us to add on like going west. Is that what you're asking for, Ms.
Well, what I'm asking for is that you made the statement was made that this project had already was bonded. The work was looking to take place this summer. Therefore, the bond for this particular work would have had to have already been passed and approved. And was the requirements that we have laid out here for this project covered in that bond issuance, or are we using other monies coupled with the bond in order to make this happen?
No, we're using that bond money. So, yeah, we had this identified early on. We learned from our 4th Avenue A to Cordova project of we just can't go in and touch the signal and lighting. Like Will said, is we dig up the sidewalk to put in the electrical components. The sidewalk doesn't meet ADA requirements. We have to change the sidewalk grade, which means we change the curb and gutter grade, which means we have to take up the asphalt, which means we have to double check the storm drain system while we're there. So the focus is signal and lighting, but it's a snowball effect. But the money was determined that we needed it a while ago.
And thank you. And that's where I thought this was going. And with that snowball effect, I know that the 4th Avenue further west, as along the same corridor and going down around to L Street, a lot of this area was stormwater system was damaged during the earthquake. And that there's been a significant amount of slip line work being done in the lower downtown area as a result of that earthquake. Is any of this repaired, identified, or coupled with, or tied to earthquake damage?
The current phase, no, we don't believe anything was identified as earthquake damage. It's just an old aging system.
That's all I needed. I just needed to be on the record that it was an earthquake. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner or for staff? Commissioner Pullis?
Does anyone know the expected design life of the soil cells? Have we done that locally before? I think I read we did it somewhere. I can't remember out of the packet, though. Does anyone know that information?
So, Commissioner Pullis, my understanding is that a similar system, if not the same system, was used over by the Denina Center for their trees. I don't personally know the longevity of this system. Our landscape architect is not on the line, so I can't really speak to that. It is a either PVC or HDPE type product, so it's not going to break down very easily.
Understood. That answered my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Ron?
Thank you, through the chair. Mr. Webb, I'm interested in the intersection of D and 4th for northbound traffic and the accentuated curb bulbs. Can you talk through the thoughts for design there? And specifically, will there be any changes to how traffic flows through that intersection? And if so, how would it be, those changes being mitigated in terms of signage or striping? Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Ron, our adjustments at D Street are relatively minor. It's going to essentially be as it is today. We're going to make a few tweaks to the curb line because we have to replace the curb anyway for what we're doing. But as far as it goes, it's gonna function the same as it does today.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions in the queue, what is the will of the body? And to just direct everyone, there is a department recommendation on page 10 of the report that I believe staff is amenable to correcting the typo.
Yes, that's correct.
Commissioner Ron? Yes, Madam Chair. In case number 2021-0034, the applicant's MOA PM&E with a request for context-sensitive solutions design study reports, review for the upgrade of 4th Avenue signals and lighting from does read A to Cordova. Not sure if a change is needed there or not. However, continuing with my motion, I move to approve subject to department recommendations A1 through 3 on page 10 of the staff packet, noting change in wording for item 2 from safety to safely.
Thank you, Commissioner Ron. We have a second by Commissioner Krishna. Would anyone like to speak to the motion?
I suppose that's my turn to speak again. I appreciate staff pulling together the information that's provided, and that's supplied by the applicant and applicant's representative. I find that what's been presented is in keeping with the improvements made to date in the general area, as well as comprehensive plan and other guiding plans for the area. For those reasons, I intend to support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ron. Seeing no one else in the queue, call for vote.
Mr. O'Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Winchester?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Mr. Ron?
Yes.
Mr. Pullis?
Yes.
And Chair Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion passes. Want to thank the petitioner for their time and staff for the report. Moving on to item G1, case 2021-0010. Can we have the report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant would like to redevelop the petition site from a manufactured home community into a mixed-use and multifamily housing development. The majority of the site is currently zoned R2M, which does not allow for mixed use nor the proposed housing density. Development is likely to begin in the summer or fall of 2021, pending approval of this request. The applicant intends to discontinue the current use of the property as a manufactured home community in phases. There are no special limitations currently imposed on the property, nor are there any being proposed in this request. The site is classified as urban residential high with residential mixed-use overlay and within a transit-supported development corridor per the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan map. Because the petition site's current classification is compatible with the proposed rezone, an accompanying amendment to the comprehensive plan is not required.
Commissioner Yell, could you speak a little bit closer to the mic, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
The Planning Department has evaluated the application and presents the following findings. For approval criteria 1, we do believe the criteria is met. This rezone is in the long-term interest of the citizens of Anchorage. The most recent estimate of potential housing units based upon zoning district conducted as part of the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan shows a gap of 7,900 residential units by 2040. Rezoning this parcel from medium-density residential and commercial to high-density residential could result in a potential gain of approximately 339 residential dwelling units when factoring the area of the site, which is just shy of 10 acres, and the intended housing densities of the R4A, which is greater than 35 dwelling units per acre. This gain would assist in closing this drastic housing gap. Additionally, the latest Anchorage housing market analysis completed in 2012 predicts a need for 6,909 new multifamily dwelling units by 2030 to accommodate for population growth. Given other factors such as stagnant income wages and an aging population, this predicted demand in compact housing options may be conservative. For approval criteria 2, we do believe the criteria is met. This rezone request both complies and conforms with the petition site's designation of urban residential high with residential mixed-use overlay and within a transit-supportive development corridor within the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan. The R4A is the intended zoning district for areas designated as urban residential high with residential mixed-use overlay, and in accordance with the comprehensive plan, these areas are to be located within underutilized residential lands well positioned for compatible infill or high-density residential development near downtown or midtown shopping, transit, parks, schools, or employment. The petition site is located at the intersection of two midtown arterials. It's near local shopping centers, parks, and schools. The site is also adequately served with properly sized public water and sewer services to accommodate the development of higher density residential uses. Additionally, this rezone is consistent with the following goals and policies of applicable comprehensive plans. And out of Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, that would be Goal 1, Land Use Policy 1.2, Goal 2, Goal 4, Land Use Policy 4.1, out of the Spenard Corridor Plan, that'd be Goal 4 and Policy 2.7. And out of Anchorage 2020, that would be Policy 11 and Policy 14. Approval criteria 3, we do believe the criteria is met. This rezone is consistent with the purpose of the R4A, the multifamily residential mixed-use zoning district, as the petition site abuts both West 36th Avenue and Arctic Boulevard, which see between 10,000 and 20,000 vehicle trips daily, and it also appears to be suitable for multifamily and mixed-use developments. Additionally, the rezone request does meet the locational requirements of the R4A district, which is in Anchorage Municipal Code. And for criteria 4, we do believe that criteria is met. This rezone is compatible with the surrounding zoning districts and existing development surrounding the petition site. The surrounding zoning districts include R2M, R3, and B3. The proposed R4A allows for greater land use density than what is allowed within the adjoining R2M district. However, the R4A is intended to be a primarily residential district, which allows for the development of non-residential uses subject to public review if above 10% of the total area. Additionally, any new development within the proposed R4A district will need to install L2 buffered landscaping along frontages which abut the lower intensity R2M district. This requirement to install buffer landscaping will help provide physical and aesthetic separation between these two zoning districts. It is unlikely that the adjoining B3 district will be adversely affected by this rezone because the permitted land use intensity within the B3 exceeds that of the R4A. The adjacent R3 district is located across the 50-foot right-of-way of West 36th Avenue. Given this physical separation, it is unlikely that the proposed R4A district will negatively impact the adjacent R3. For approval criteria 5, we do believe that criteria is met. Public water and sewer services are available to this parcel. The petition site is within the police and fire service areas, building safety service area, Anchorage roads and drainage service area, and the parks and recreation service area. Fixed route public transportation is currently available at this site on 30-minute headways, and increasing the land use intensity in this area is unlikely to stretch the capabilities of existing services beyond their capacity. For approval criteria 6, we do also believe that that criteria is met. The proposed rezone is unlikely to adversely impact the existing natural environment. While some vegetation clearing and/or alteration is anticipated, municipal code places preference on using existing vegetation and trees to achieve compliance with landscaping requirements. In addition to landscaping requirements, this site may be required to construct driveways and parking facilities which meet the minimum requirements of Title 21 and Title 23 at the time at which a land use permit is applied for. Along with constructed vehicular facilities, this site will also be required to install all necessary utilities, including stormwater and drainage facilities. The site has access to both West 36th Avenue, Arctic Boulevard, as well as Chugach Way, and it is unlikely that the additional traffic generation to this site from the development of multifamily and mixed use will increase the adverse impacts to the surrounding natural environment. For approval criteria 7, we do believe that criteria is met. And when analyzing a rezone, the planning department can not only consider the planned use, but rather the shift from what is and is not allowed under the current zoning designation, and what could be allowed under the proposed zoning. Given this methodology, rezoning the petition site to R4A would allow for a variety of commercial uses that would not otherwise be permitted under the existing R2M. However, there is a compatibility protection within the R4A district standards which call for a higher level of review for a mixed-use development containing 10% or greater square footage devoted to non-residential uses. Additionally, L2 buffer landscaping would be required along property frontages which abut the neighboring R2M zone lots. These protections would require a higher level of site screening than what's currently required under the existing R2M, and would also allow for public comment should a mixed-use development with a high percentage of non-residential uses be proposed. For approval criteria 8, the criteria is met. This request is consistent with the parcel's designation and land use policies within applicable comprehensive plans. The petition site is designated as urban residential high within a residential mixed-use overlay and within a transit-supported development corridor in the Anchorage 2040 land use plan. The immediate area around the petition site is classified as Main Street Corridor, Compact Mixed Residential Low, and Compact Mixed Residential Medium. The underlying zoning designation for these areas are consistent with these classifications. Placing an R4A zoning district within this area will be appropriate considering the petition site's proximity to a Main Street corridor and intersection of two minor arterials. Additionally, it is important to note that Anchorage has a known lack of residential housing capacity based upon current zoning, and this rezone will facilitate the development of more residential dwelling units than the current R2M district allows for. This will help lessen the current and anticipated residential housing shortage within the municipality. In approval criteria 9, that criteria is met, and this rezoning will not result in a split zone lot. We do have an amendment for the Commission's consideration tonight, which will amend the department recommendations. Should this amendment be adopted by the Commission, there will be no conditions of approval, and the department does believe that all the approval criteria for the rezone is met. And we do recommend approval of the rezoning from R2M to B3, R2M and B3 to R4A with the amendment as proposed. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing no questions at this time, can we hear from the petitioner? If you could turn on the mic before you speak and then say your name for the record.
Where there's tape on front of it, just push that. There you go.
Great. Yeah, this is, my name is James Brooks, and I represent the ownership of Midtown Center. What I want to do is reserve the 10 minutes that I have to address any public concerns, but yeah, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. I had a comment in the queue that they just wish that you had spoken a little bit louder, so note for next time, but I will let them know that the representative has chosen to reserve his time for rebuttal. And I believe we have a member of the public wishing to testify, so we'll turn to a member of the public at this time. Yes, you can go ahead and step forward. Make sure to turn the mic on, then state your name for the record, and let us know if you're here as an individual, if you're representing a group.
Okay, can you hear me well?
If you could speak up just a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that good? There's such an echo here, it's hard to tell. Okay, hi. My name is Karen Button, and I am the board president for Friends of Fish Creek. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of Fish Creek, and I just want to say first of all that we don't have any problem with what Mr. Brooks is doing in the area. I mean, it definitely needs some improvement there. In the Anchorage Area Plan 2040, the Anchorage MTP Plan 2040, the Anchorage Assembly, there's an Anchorage Assembly resolution, and the Spenard Corridor Plan, there is both support and guidance for daylighting Fish Creek. One of the things that I wanted to really speak to here is, let me get these here, is that if we are to really capture the goals of these plans in reference to Fish Creek, the idea of daylighting must be captured in development planning. Page 10 of this application is the first and only allusion to Fish Creek based on comments by Watershed Management, but without naming it. Because this parcel has the mapped creek, this is a great opportunity to capture these goals with the rezone. Planning references Goal 4, Policy 2.7 of the Spenard Corridor Plan to support this rezoning, but it should also include Goal 9, Policy 2.16, and 2.17, which are specific to what happens with Fish Creek in development areas. There's also a Chugach Way Area Transportation Elements Report that is ongoing. That report will be included in the upcoming, what is it called, the Small Area Implementation Plan. And, you know, this is a reinvestment zone area. And in that Transportation Elements Report, there are 3 alternatives. Alternatives 2 and 3 include daylighting Fish Creek. There's also a non-motorized plan that's underway, and it's a draft at this point. And there's also inclusion of Fish Creek and a Fish Creek multi-use path through this area. So we understand this is zoning. You know, this is planning and zoning. There will be a lot of other opportunities for this particular development and development that's happening on the other end, the west end of Chugach Way. But we really feel like it's very important to have an inclusion in this application of a condition that future development plans include the policies which have been set forth in all of these different plans that support both the daylighting of Fish Creek and support a multi-use path through this area. Thank you.
And I don't currently see any questions in the queue, but I'm going to ask a clarifying question,
Sure.
and maybe I am naive here. It was my, maybe this is just an assumption I have, that daylighting is the process by which you just allow natural light to kind of come through. I think I've only heard it in reference to buildings as far as like creating windows to allow natural light through. So is daylighting as it applies to Fish Creek just trying to prevent it from being in complete shaded areas and to allow natural light into the Fish Creek so it doesn't have to have artificial light?
Sure, thank you for the question. No, daylighting in this reference for a creek refers to bringing the creek back up to the surface. And right now, 70% of Fish Creek is underground in culverts and pipes. And this property, the application for this area has a portion of the creek that is above ground, the historical channel, and then there's sections of it that don't. And I'm not advocating for, you know, I'm not trying to say anything about how the development should take place. What I'm saying is that these processes, these goals that have been established in all these plans should be included. So.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification. Obviously, okay. I was not aware. Thank you.
Well, you're not the only one. It's kind of a wonky term, I suppose.
We also have a question from Commissioner Pullis.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Do you have any idea how much of Fish Creek, you know, flow-wise is in like 36th Avenue versus what's at this site? I know there's several branches, you know, and a lot of it's piped. I had the same question today and kind of Google Earth this site and see that it pops out on the kind of more west side of this property. It just kind of comes out of pipe and there's the channel there. So I was just wondering about the flows. Do you know, is there more in 36th Avenue piped or at this location? Wondering about that information.
Right, yeah, thank you. Fish Creek, so Cuddy Pond, that's not very far from here, is actually part of Fish Creek. It was created in order to mitigate flooding, which is a problem within Fish Creek. And so from Cuddy Pond, it goes back underground into pipes. And I'm not sure of the actual percentage under 36th Avenue because there's a couple of different pipes and there's some valves that are not working properly at Minnesota and Spenard. But it's a significant portion. I would say it's probably at least 40% to 50% of what's currently underground. And I will say this, is that when we have talked about daylighting the creek, there's two phases. Fish Creek also, you know, its origin, is a spring that's over about 42nd and Laurel Street, close to Lake Otis. And so daylighting the creek from that portion to west to Cuddy Pond is a phase 2. And right now we're really focused on a phase 1, which is Cuddy Pond to Cook Inlet. And so west of Minnesota is where the majority of the waters do come out. But there is this section of Wilshire to Minnesota where it's more of a historic channel. And that section of it probably has about 30% of the water in it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And then do we have a member testifying on the phone?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your testimony.
Hello?
Hello? Hi, Francesca. This is Planning and Zoning calling for your public testimony on case 2021-001.
Hello.
Hi, are you calling as an individual or a representative of a group?
Individual.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. If you could please state your full name for the record, you can begin.
Okay, and I live right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Francesca Allegrezza, and I'm in Spenard, and I oppose changing zoning. If we are going to be changing any of these zoning laws, it should be going up to the voters. And this same thing came about last year with AO 2020-58, and there was about 5+ days of testimony in opposition of changing zoning to do just this. And again, I'm opposed to changing Title I to just accommodate a few. And that's all I have to say. I'm in opposition of changing zoning laws without it going up to a vote of the people. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And I believe that is all for our public testimony tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
All right. The petitioner has 10 minutes remaining for rebuttal if they would like to speak. Reminder to turn the microphone on and speak a little bit louder than last time.
Yeah, this is James Brooks again. So I want to respond to the Friends of Fish Creek and make sure that I get the record straight. From what I have read on the Assembly interest in daylighting Fish Creek and talking to some of the people that are familiar with it, say it's mostly an aspirational thing. Of course, everyone's looking for a amenity for that area. And to the extent that, we could integrate, something that adds value, I would say that our partnership would like to be able to tie something into that. But from what we understand, when I have gone and looked at the creek where it does come out of the culvert, right now it's currently culvertized, there is no water flow. There have been, in the studies that they're talking about, not only do they show daylighting Fish Creek, but they also show a significant amount of public infrastructure that would be going along with that. There is no expectation right now that any of that has been funded. The engineering of it, of course, you can probably make something work, but right now, from what I understand about the daylighting, that it's going to be a push to make it even feasible. Now, I'm not sure the percentages that are being thrown out, that is, the flow, but from what I understand, it's just a tributary that comes off onto our land, and we have right now no plans on daylighting it, unless we've got people that we're actually negotiating with that we know are capable of delivering. So by inserting limitations on what we can do right now, you're essentially establishing resistance to projects which are already difficult and difficult to make pencil or feasible. So it kind of starts to lock in something which we're all starting to change. The thing that I feel like is most important is integrating and upgrading Triage Way to the extent that we can have public improvements meeting, is to have multi-use trails that tie Midtown to the university and to West Anchorage. So to me, that's kind of a better allocation of our resources, because if we want to start planning, we want to start designing to those types of improvements. So we have approximately 1.2 million square feet of office space that's been built to the east. We have Cook Inlet that's already building to the west, to the point where we can tie all this together. So layering in more complexity that's difficult to engineer and probably going to be difficult to fund, all it does is hamstring our ability to create what I think would be a beautiful environment. So anyway, that's my main response to the issues that were just brought up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the commission to the petitioner or for staff? Commissioner O'Quinn?
So just a month or two ago, we had a similar rezone request at Arctic and Benson, I believe, where it was a trailer court that was being rezoned. It had a similar aspirational zone, and the developer took a different approach in that case. We did hear a lot of testimony from residents of that development. Have you had conversations with the the residents of your development currently about future housing plans? Because we'll be adding 35 dwelling units an acre, but possibly taking away quite a bit of housing in the interim that may impact individuals that might not be able to afford the new housing.
Let me just make sure I can restate your question. Is the concern about the loss of housing in the interim?
No, it's just it's more about the transition period and allowing the individuals that reside at the current development opportunity to find new housing with adequate lead time and that sort of thing.
That's actually a good question, because I have communicated a little bit with a mobile home park owner on the corner of Benson and Arctic. I think what's a little different about my parcel is we have 9 parcels on our site. Of that, we have 3 that are large enough to allow us to do this in phases. And that would be our intention at this point. We don't have any definitive plans. We've owned this property for 16 or 17 years. We're trying to get it to the point to make it work. And so the way that right now, the existing revenue stream, I think, is helpful. It helps us get through design. It helps us get through this process. We can carry the property without, without the cost of going through the entitlement. But what I think we are capable of doing is relocating some of the mobile homes that are still usable. Now, we own most of these mobile homes, which is unlike most mobile home parks in town. And so what that allows us, it gives us the flexibility to be able to the extent that they're reusable, to relocate on the site. And then we would be able to, provided we don't replat, I think we would be doing it in a phased manner. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Are there any other questions in the queue? Seeing no questions in the queue, what is the will of the body? I'd like to remind the Commission there is a staff recommendation on page 10 of your report. And this may be a lesson to not type unless you're prepared to speak, but Commissioner Winchester, I saw that you were typing in the queue. Would you like to speak to this? Would you like to make a motion or ask a question?
Sure. I'll question the staff. Are we being asked to not consider those conditions on page 10? Is that what I'm saying?
Through the chair, so the conditions as originally proposed are no longer necessary due to a reread of code and reevaluation of the legal nonconformity that would remain on site should this rezone get passed. So the condition as stated in the staff report is no longer necessary, which is why the amendment is being put forward for the planning and zoning consideration. Thank you.
Commissioner Krishna.
Sure, I'll get us started. In the matter of case 2021-0010, request to rezone from R2M and B3 to R4A, I will make a motion to approve with no conditions of approval because I don't see any here.
Moved by Commissioner Krishna. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Before we have a commissioner speak, I'm going to have Mr. Yell speak if there's any clarification that would be needed for that motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just confused on the motion. It was stated, motion to approve with no conditions of approval, but is that adopting the amendment proposed? In which case, that would be a motion to approve as amended, or with staff amendments.
Commissioner Krishna, was that your intention to move to approve as amended? As
Yes,
staff amended?
that's correct.
All right, so there's a motion to approve with the staff amendments. Commissioner Winchester, I'm just going to verify that you are still seconding that motion.
Yes.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? Commissioner Krishna.
Sure, I'll speak to the motion. Yes, I made this motion and am supportive of it because I do believe that this rezoning is consistent with the Anchorage 2040 plan, with the local area plans, with other considerations like the designation of Chugach Way as a reinvestment focus area. And in addition, it'll be, hopefully adding a significant amount of residential housing, which again is, one of the goals and intents of Anchorage 2040.
Thank you, Commissioner Krishna. Commissioner Winchester.
Yeah, I would also like to comment that this appears to be well located for this type of development in R4A. I'd also like to say that it was supported by the Spenard Community Council, and an adjoining neighbor had a comment where they supported this also, and there was no comments against this other than the comments made by Friends of Fish Creek, and so I'd like to support this.
Commissioner Ron, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question of Commissioner Krishna and perhaps the board in total. Wondering about the status of the advisory comments and how those would be applied if the motion passes in its currently stated form. I have particular interest in ensuring that Watershed Management Services advisory comment is tagged as written.
I believe that's a question for staff. Mr. Yell?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the advisory comments are simply just to notify the applicant and the public of comments made by reviewing agencies. There's no intention to hold the applicant to those comments or make them conditions of approval in this matter. So thank you.
Thank you, staff. Through the chair, and Commissioner Chris, I guess directly to you, I'm not sure how this should proceed, but would have interest in amending your motion to establish Watershed Management Services advisory comment as a condition of approval.
Sorry, I was having a little difficulty hearing. Was it that you wanted to move to amend the motion to require that any comments were considered prior to approval? Sorry, I didn't quite get the wording of it.
Sure. Apologies, Madam Chair. I have interest in establishing Watershed Management Services advisory comment as a condition of approval, such that that language is carried.
All right. Since this wasn't a formal motion, I'm going to take this as an inquiry about if we were to take a formal motion for this. And I'm going to first turn to Mr. Yell to kind of give us some guidance on if this type of motion were to be proposed, some of the consequences.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So that advisory comment from Watershed Management Services refers to any future platting of the site. If it were to be added as a special limitation on this property, it just wouldn't necessarily be consistent with the purpose and intent of this rezone. If you added it as a special limitation, it would also be duplicative of what's already existing in code with stream protection setback regulations, as well as the requirements to identify them. So at this point with the rezone, this is, in my opinion, not appropriate to add as a special limitation on the rezone. This is something that's more appropriate when the plating phase or development phase. So, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Yell. Commissioner Krishna, would you still like to comment?
I would not, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Spinelli, would you like to comment as well?
Sure. I just typed into the chat echoing what staff had reported on the plat notes, future recommended plat notes by watershed.
All right. I see it appears as though Commissioner Ron would not like to further that motion. Moving on to Commissioner O'Quinn.
I just have one more quick question for staff. There had been some edits proposed to the R4A designation. Can you speak to those, where we are in that process, and how that might affect this project?
So thank you. Through the chair, the planning department currently is in the process of amending the R4A district-specific standards and also allowed uses in Chapter 5 and Chapter 7 in the design standards for R4A. To give you a definitive timeline on that, I can't say. All I can say at this point is that it's in process. And specific effects of those amendments on this particular rezone, the use of the property as it stands now will be legally non-conforming should this rezone get approved. So the use of the property can continue until such time as it's discontinued.
As far as the change in the allowed uses, can you speak to what's been proposed to be changed in the R4A?
Through the chair, without having the text language in front of me, I'm hesitant to speak on exact changes and what's being proposed or what's not being proposed. Once we have a public review draft in front of us, I think I could speak to that at that point.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Seeing no other comments in the queue, I will call for a vote.
Mr. O'Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Winchester?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Mr. Ron?
Yes.
Mr. Polis?
Yes.
And Chair Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that motion passes. Before we move on to agenda item G2, case 2021-0032, I just want to make a comment to the member of the public that's here. I saw at one point you went to raise your hand. At that point, comment period was over, but if you have any questions, you can address them to staff by contacting them after the meeting, either by sticking around or by sending them an email or calling them. So. Sorry, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to take anything further, but I do really want to thank you for your time and for moving on to case 2021-0032. Can we hear a report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Nature Construction, the petitioner, is requesting to rezone one parcel totaling 4.88 acres from I-1 and I-2 light and heavy industrial districts respectively to the I-2 district. The applicant would like to rezone the single parcel to result in one consistent zoning district and eliminate the existing split zoned configuration. The split zoning occurred in 1983 under Plat 1983-83 and persisted when the area was later subdivided. Comments from reviewing agencies are included in attachment 3 on page 45 of your packet. No objections to this rezone were received. The Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend approval to the Assembly following the subject to the following approval criteria. Criteria 1 is met. This rezone is consistent. Excuse me. The rezone is in the long-term interests of the citizens of Anchorage and promotes public health, safety, and general welfare. The proposed rezoning provides an opportunity for the petitioner to continue utilizing their parcel with a consistent and cohesive zoning designation. Criteria 2 is met. This proposal to rezone to I-2 is consistent with the general industrial designation in the 2040 land use plan. The implementing districts of the general industrial district are I-2 heavy industrial and MI marine industrial. The proposed rezone to the I-2 district supports this designation. This rezone is also consistent with the Ship Creek waterfront land use plan designation of general industrial. The rezone is consistent with the policies of both comprehensive plans on page 3 and 4 of this report. Criteria 3 is met. The proposed rezone is consistent with the purpose of the I-2 heavy industrial district. Criteria 4 is met. The general area contains a mix of light and heavy industrial uses. The proposed rezoning is consistent and compatible with those uses. Criteria 5 is met. Public water and sewer services are available to this parcel, and the parcel is within the police, fire, building safety, Anchorage roads, and drainage service areas. Increasing the land use intensity in this area is unlikely to stretch the capabilities of existing services beyond their capacity. Criteria 6 is met. The proposed rezoning is not anticipated to result in any significant adverse impacts. While the site is within a seismic zone 4, mitigation efforts will be required prior to any future development. Criteria 7 is met. The proposed rezoning is not anticipated to result in significant adverse impacts with adjacent land uses. Criteria 8 is met. This request is consistent with the parcel's designation of general industrial in both the Anchorage 2040 land use plan map and the Ship Creek waterfront land use plan. This proposed rezone to resolve a currently split zone lot will create a compatible land use pattern. Criteria 9 is met. The proposed rezoning will not result in a split zone lot and is correcting an existing split zoning. The department finds that the approval criteria for the rezone is met. Therefore, the department recommends approval of the rezoning from I-1 and I-2 districts to the I-2 district. I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Is there any questions for staff from the commission? Commissioner Strike?
Yes, thank you to the chair. I'm trying to ascertain on the mapping. It speaks to the properties to the north, to the south, east, and west. And the area to the west is currently I-2. The adjacent property, this property is on the main corridor of Reeve and 3rd Avenue, I believe, is how I understand the mapping. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So is it fair to say that the properties west of this property is not adjacent to any major arterial?
Are you asking if the street to the west, North Wrangell Street, is a major arterial?
Well, we're trying to ascertain whether or not this property is, the best use I-1, I-2, and it's in a transition. It was part of its I-1, part of its I-2, and we're looking for the best piece. And we're coming out and saying, hey, the surrounding area is conducive to this type of change. But I just want to clarify that the area to the west, that is I-2, is not adjacent to a major arterial road. It's not adjacent to Reed Boulevard, for example. Okay.
Apologies, Commissioner Strike. I'm just trying to understand
we'll
the
let
question.
the petitioner address. No problem. We'll go on the record and let the petitioner address that. And the other question is a follow-up. If we look at the Anchorage public property detail that was provided, and the total property that's identified is 213,897 square feet, or 807 square feet. I'm looking at page 22 of the packet. The zoning that's identified on that public detail is I-1 currently. Now, is that a mistake that the city has made?
Thank you, Commissioner Strike. Through the chair, the public inquiry sheet does show I-1 as the zoning district. Unfortunately, the capabilities of this quick info sheet that is automatically populated doesn't have the capability to list multiple zoning districts. So while that shows a single zoning district, it is split about right in half. The north half of the property is currently I-2 and the southern half is I-1.
Well, I want to be careful with that statement because the body of the proposal indicates that I-1 is in the minority of the property, not the majority or equal.
The petitioner can likely give you the exact breakdown.
And the support for going I-2 is stipulating that the majority of the property is already I-2. Therefore, we might as well have a standard zoning and incorporate I-1 and make the whole property I-2, that is. But I-2 is the minority of the property, yet it's the majority of how this property has been taxed and identified on the public rolls up to this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Strike. Through the chair, I would recommend the petitioner may be able to give you the exact square footages. And we're seeing the note to see page 11 that provides a map, and it does show, I misspoke, the greater majority is the northern portion zoned I-2 heavy industrial. Page 11 shows the current zoning line.
No problem. I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I apologize for that. It's just that we're trying to use the information that's provided to give us the best information to ascertain and make judgments as to what this property's best use is. And so if I were to surmise, this property has been miscalculated as I-1 for tax purposes up to this point, I-1 being the minority of the property. So I'll let the petitioner address that situation when they speak. As well as is the split zoning. I always have a problem with split zoning. My question is, maybe the more appropriate zoning for this is I-1 for the entire property based on the proximity to the adjacent arterial roads and the rest of the surrounding area, and not the other way around. And again, I'll let the petitioner then address that question here to the body. So sorry for putting you on the spot like that. I know we're parsing words in areas here, the different areas of the proposal before us, but we'll move forward. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing no other questions from staff, can we hear from the petitioner?
Hello, my name is Laquita Chmielowski. I'm with Dowell, and I'm here tonight representing Easter Construction for the rezone request for Track C1. So as we were talking, our staff mentioned, the project area is shown here in the red and white dashed outline adjacent to Reeve Boulevard. The majority of the site is zoned I-2. It's approximately 3.4 acres of the overall, a little over 4 acre parcel. The zoning to the west and to the north is also I-2. It is consistent with the 2040 plan for this area as general industrial, which is for light and heavy industrial uses. So just a little bit about the background of how this came about to be split zoned. When the area was rezoned in 1965, there was a jog that designated the I-2 and the I-1 zoning districts, but this whole area was part of a larger parcel, so it's unclear how they determined where that I-1 and I-2 designation should be, because it wasn't associated with like a property line or some feature that we're aware of today. And so as staff mentioned, in 1983, there was a plat done that created Track C, D, E, and F. And you can see that on your on the left-hand side. So Track C was the larger parcel that went all the way down to 3rd Avenue. And the area in brown outlined is approximately the location of the I-2 zoning, and then the rest of the parcel was zoned I-1. And then in 2005, Tract C1 or Tract C was divided into two parcels, creating Tract C1 and Tract C2. And again, the brown outline shows the approximate area that is today the I2 zoning, and then the gray dashed line shows the overall property for the Tract C1. So it just carried forward that split zoning. So this is really a housekeeping measure to correct a split zoning that occurred back in 1983. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Strike.
Yes, thank you, and to the chair. I guess the basic question is, from what your statement here, the largest parcel of land, the largest parcel connected to this before us today is zoned I2. The municipal rolls seem to show that it's being taxed as I1. Can you tell us then, therefore, has it been properly identified in the tax rolls?
I can't speak to that specifically. I know it is a question that we researched with the municipality to figure out the correct zoning, because if I remember correctly, there was older property cards that showed it as I2. And so we actually worked with planning staff and with the zoning reviewers to actually figure out if it was split zoned and what that looked like. So I can't speak to the.
And you weren't able. So you looked into it, and you weren't able to find out anything from the city. You weren't able to find an answer.
So we were able to determine that it was split zoned, and the majority of the site was I2. I can't speak to how it's been taxed to this point.
I believe that we have a request to speak from staff to clarify. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Geddig.
Thank you. Through the chair, those tax records that Commissioner Strike questioned earlier, restating that they can only show one zoning district in creating that, if you were to call the tax office, they would be able to tell you if there are multiple. And unfortunately, it lists those out alphabetically. So even though the I2 district takes up a larger space in real life, it only has the capability to list those alphabetically, which is why we see the I1 first and foremost on that sheet. Thank you.
Turning back to Commissioner Strike.
No, thank you. That's a plausible explanation. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Gardner.
Yes, thank you. A question for the applicant, and I apologize if this is in the application somewhere that I didn't see, but I was just curious if there was a planned change in use that prompted the desire to request the rezone, or if some other change that led to this application.
No, the site's currently developed. There's a warehouse with some material storage on site. So there are no development plans. It was just, an opportunity to correct the split zoning on the property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, seeing no other questions in the queue, can we hear from, I believe we have a member of the public wishing to testify over the phone.
Welcome to the voicemail of 90.
That concludes public testimony unless you would like me to try again.
Will you just try one more time? Thank you.
Welcome to the voicemail.
All right, thank you. Since we have no members of the public wishing to speak, it goes back to the petitioner. Would you like to state any comments for rebuttal or make any closing remarks?
I have no further comments. Thank you.
All right, turning to the commission, what is the will of the body? Commissioner Winchester.
Yes, in the case of 2021-0032, a request to rezone one parcel from I1 and I2 districts to I2 district.
Moved by Commissioner Winchester, and I believe there's a second in the queue by Commissioner Krishna. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, this rezone will provide a single zoning district for the entire tract that is consistent with the surrounding uses. This rezone complies and conforms to Anchorage 2040 land use plan, also the Ship Creek waterfront land use plan, and also in the public comment period, there was no opposition noted.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Seeing no one else in the queue, call for a vote.
Mr. O'Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Winchester?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Mr. Ron?
Yes.
Mr. Polis?
Yes.
And Chair Bailey?
Yes,
Thank you.
and that motion passes. And that concludes all of our regular agenda items. I'd like to thank the petitioner for their time today. And is there a motion in the queue? I see a Commissioner Strike. I take that as a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Strike, seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Just in case, I'm going to let Commissioner Polis type. Nope, he is getting out of the queue because he knows everyone else wants to adjourn. Seeing no objection to the motion to adjourn, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.